drone's in there somewhere. I've never lost a drone before. So welcome to another video, and this here is the new DJI Neo, and according to the instructions there are a lot of things that you can't do with this. In fact, it seems like there's very little that you can do as far as FPV. And in this video I'm not going to do a review because you've probably seen loads of those around already and you'd be bored by them, and as special as I think I might be, I don't think I'm special enough for you to watch it again. So this is going to be about me answering some questions that you might have based on what you can't do with the DJI Neo. And looking at the instructions, DJI recommend against doing power dives, power loops, flips, rolls, flat spins, flat yaw spins, aggressive fast forward flights. The list is actually quite long. So in this video I'm going to answer what happens if you do those things and how this little drone behaves. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight onto it. So just my quick impressions of the drone before I start. The build quality is actually really good, better than I expected for the fact that it's only 135 grams. You can take that down to 130 grams if you take the prop cages off. The flight time is quite decent. It's on paper it's 18 minutes. In reality you're looking at more around about 11-12 minutes. I've had about 9 minutes, taking it down to 18% in fast forward flight continuous, so that's actually not too bad for it. The video quality is okay. It's not as good as the Avatar 2 or any of the mini series drones, but it's what you'd expect. It is 4K. But yeah, it's not the best, but then you can fly this in places that you can't fly other drones, so you have to give and take a little bit. Yep, that's a really quick rundown of what I think about the drone. So let's get into flying it the way you should fly it and see what happens. So starting with how this flips, on the roll axis it's a little bit uncomfortable. You can do it, but it just doesn't inspire you with much confidence. It just feels a bit horrible. It is definitely possible. I've tried it with a decent distance from the ground and it's sort of okay, but definitely not pleasant. Backwards flips, they're fine. Hey, pitch or elevator flips are a little bit better, a little bit more controllable, but again it's just not really particularly nice, but more easy than roll flips. So flipping in any direction is definitely possible, but definitely needs a bit of experience and a bit of precaution in terms of the altitude. I definitely wouldn't do it too much. Looking at yaw spins, I've had a little look at how it behaves on sort of gentle yaw spins and yaw turns. If you do it the recommended way, which is to apply a fair bit of roll while you're doing your yaw spin, which isn't a flat spin anymore, then it's quite safe and quite controllable. If you try and do a completely flat yaw spin, if you do it aggressively, it sort of snaps out quite easily, sort of suddenly gains altitude, very dependent on your throttle control, but definitely not that nice. So I definitely wouldn't want to do some aggressive flat yaw spins, but it is possible. It's definitely possible, but I think the key thing is unpredictability, and with drones like this, if you're flying over water, for example, or over areas where you can't retrieve it, the last thing you want it to do is kind of suddenly snap out and flip and crash into the ground where you might not be able to retrieve it. Incidentally, at this point I haven't seen any turtle mode supported on this at the moment. That might be because it's so underpowered it doesn't have the power to flip over if it does land upside down, so just bear that in mind if you're flying somewhere where it's unretrievable, that you won't have turtle mode to get you out of trouble. The next thing I've tried is power loops. Power loops with this are actually okay. Again, they kind of depend on how you do them, and I certainly wouldn't flip out of them too aggressively at the bottom, but they are doable. Certainly didn't scare me as much as some of the other things I tried, but again it sort of depends on how you do them and how confident you are doing those kind of maneuvers. I would say actually if you're looking to practice freestyle flying, like flips, power loops, dives and those sort of things, this is not the drone for it. People might think it is because it's DJI and it's got GPS and all that sort of stuff, but in my view you'd probably be better off something possibly cheaper, a bit more powered, that can take those kind of maneuvers, so I definitely wouldn't do that. Moving on into dives. So dives, I've got these beautiful massive cliffs behind me, so it'd be a shame not to use them for it. So I've flown to the top of them and had a little look at how it behaves diving down them, and this is where it got quite interesting because on a couple of attempts it sort of behaved quite well. It sort of came out of the dive, didn't pull out too aggressively at the bottom. I wouldn't recommend that in any case. You really have to control the way you exit your maneuver and the way you pitch out of maneuvers with this drone, because if you yank back the pitch, it'll just stall and do nasty things. So a couple of occasions it worked really well, but on a few other occasions, for no apparent reason at all, it seems to suddenly flip out and pitch up and stall and do weird things and nearly crash. So that really gave me a bit of a squeaky bum moment and sort of makes me not want to dive this at all, because again, it's that unpredictability of when's it going to do it, am I somewhere where I can't retrieve it. Okay, that's way. Nope, didn't like that. Okay, that's weird because I wasn't applying anything too aggressive on it that time. It was just seemed to be caught by something, maybe some wind, or just wasn't pulling back or anything. So yeah, diving down those cliffs behind me, meh. It's put me off wanting to dive this at all. Definitely not pleasant. The next couple of areas that DJI recommend against are flying over water and fast continuous forward flight. Well, I've got plenty of water right next to me, so I've flown up and down that a few times, and as far as flying over water is concerned, in manual mode, absolutely no problems at all. Nothing unexpected happens. I don't know why they recommend against it, if it's to do with the downward sensors if you're in normal or sports mode, which is possible, and that's something they recommend against with pretty much all of their drones in the Mavic series and Mini series and so on. But in FPV full manual mode, no problem at all flying over water. So flying a couple of feet from the water surface is absolutely fine. In fact, I was starting to get quite confident with it and starting to try and hit some gaps, fly a bit closer to the ground, and then this happened. I think it's safe to say that it doesn't float, which is a question you might ask if you're... Oh, hey! Ah, come here, you! Big question is going to be whether it'll still fly. It is completely drenched in salt water, so that's not good for drones. I'd be interested to see if it'll still fly. But hopefully I can at least extract the footage from it so I can show you what I've just been doing in good quality. Otherwise you will have been watching it in DVR quality, but there we go. That would have been my first lost drone ever, so I'm pleased I got it back. Might have to be a care refresh replacement though. Always get care refresh, especially when you do stupid stuff like this. So here we are, drone retrieved, and I thought this was going to be my first ever drone that I've actually lost, but I haven't, which was very, very lucky, and you can't script this sort of stuff. But yeah, first thing I've done is I've taken it to some fresh water, rinsed it down, dried as good as I can. Now I'm going to let it dry out completely and see if I can at least extract the footage from it. If not, you would have been watching all previous footage in DVR, and that'll be for that reason, and this will have to go back on Care Refresh. I'll probably send this back on Care Refresh anyway, because I always feel when this sort of thing happens, I sort of can't trust the drone anymore, because you don't know what's maybe compromised in it. But interesting point is, obviously this doesn't have any SD card slots, and in this sort of instance, if I would have recorded onto SD card, there's a higher chance I might be able to get my footage from that flight. Because I'm recording onto the onboard storage, I'm sort of dependent on what's happened in there now and whether that drone is actually still functioning. So that's a bit of a downside with onboard storage. Other than that, I've got no problems with it. I quite like the idea of having to clean my storage periodically anyway. But yeah, that's a bit of a downer. There's no major damage on this. Yeah. There's a tiny bit of a scratch on the one of the ductings, but it hasn't cracked. So whatever caused that scratch would have been probably a decent impact. I'll have a look at the DVR to see where that actually happened, but it didn't crack, and this is something where the Avata 2 was let down quite a lot with these ductings kind of bending and cracking quite easily. So going back to the original point of this video, can you freestyle it? Well, the short answer is yes-ish. It's not completely limited in any way, in the sense that it is just a drone, and a drone's just a drone really. It's just limited by its power and the pitch tune that it has. But in this case, it is a very underpowered drone, and it's very poorly tuned, like all DJI FPV drones. It's got a very sloppy sort of pitch tune on it, probably done for long flight times. But that means that when you try and do these flips and rolls and power dives and things, it just doesn't inspire you with confidence. And I think that's the most important thing to note, is as much as you sort of can do those maneuvers, this drone will flip out and do unexpected things very readily. That's the most important thing to take away from this video, is this drone will do funky things which you won't like if you try those maneuvers. So once again, if you're looking to get a drone which you want to practice freestyle droning or freestyle FPV flight with, this probably isn't the one for it. You could probably get a nice, even a 4S FPV sort of freestyle drone for similar money. Obviously, if you're bought into the DJI ecosystem, you'll want it to be digital, so it might cost a little bit more with an air unit on it, but it'll be a lot more capable, and you're probably less likely to crash it if you do these kind of maneuvers. This, if you practice these maneuvers for the first time, you think, I'm going to try a flip or I'm going to try a power loop. If you're not confident enough to deal with unexpected things which will throw at you, you will crash it, and you might not break, but you're not going to get anywhere with it, because that learning curve is never going to happen. So I hope you found this useful. I found it very interesting, because I was genuinely curious how this would behave when you do those kind of maneuvers. But in terms of cruising around, fast forward flight, absolutely no problem. You can fly this continually in fast forward flight, not flat out, but at a reasonable speed for 8-9 minutes, and it won't cause any issues. And it's actually quite pleasant to fly. You can hit small gaps. You don't have to worry about people around you and not adhering to rules and regulations. So it's great for those kind of things, and it's very compact. You can carry it around with you all the time. So there's a lot going for this, but not freestyle. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video and hope you learned something from it. If you did, remember to hit the like button and subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And until the next video, happy flying, and once I get this back, I'll be creating more content on it. See you soon.